Doesn't look too bad. Yeah. Just get these guys. Cool. Hey guys, thanks for watching some of the videos I've had up on the YouTube. What I'm going to do real quick is just give you a brief overview of what we're doing on the river here today. We're down on Pool 4. I'm with my buddy Brian. Beautiful day out here. We've got temperatures in the upper 20s, low 30s. A little bit of a stout north wind. The eagles are out buzzing around. That's what I was checking out there. They're enjoying the shad feast that's going on down here. What I'm going to do is just show you some of the plastics we're using, some of the jig heads we're using, to give you a rough idea of what you want to do when you come on down here to enjoy some of these walleyes and saugers. During the daytime, a lot of time what I'm using is a little bit heavier jig head. This one is right around 1/4 ounce. It's a pretty hefty sized jig. The big reason for that is the fact that I'm going to be dragging and a little bit of vertical jigging in the 20 to 30 foot range. A lot of these fish will be out on the deeper edges during the daytime because they're so light sensitive. Right now this winter we haven't had a lot of rain or snow, so we've got real good water clarity and a real slow flow. And a lot of times that's going to drive those fish deeper. During the daytime I do like to tip this with a little bit smaller profile. This is a 3.5 inch paddle tail from Bee Fish and Tackle. It's a real compact bait. It's got a little paddle kicker on there, which is going to move real nice through the water at real low speeds. It's a real thin profile through the tail, so it gets a good undulation on that tail. During the daytime, I also like to use an assortment of smaller ringworms. This is a 3-inch version of the Bee Fish and ringworm. Dean from Everett's had them designed a few years ago. It's about the only place you can find them is down here in Red Wing. It's a real neat profile. This is called Camo. It's a color I really like a lot on a darker day. Today it's probably not a real great choice because we've got a lot of high sunlight. And a good rule of thumb out here is bright day, bright bait, dark day, dark bait during the daytime. So I got that 3-inch ringworm. Also a new product on the market. It's been out for a couple years. Didn't get a lot of traction early on. Some river guys started picking up, and Berkley's really started to make a lot of color options in it. Is the Berkley 3.5 inch T-tail minnow. Again, real similar profile to what that Bee Fishing paddle tail is going to have. A little bit softer plastic, and you do have the advantage that it is a power bait, so it is a scented lure. In this clear water, with the new paddle tail that Berkley's got out there, it is a scented lure. I don't see a lot of advantage in this clear water to the scent. I do like some of the color patterns they make in it. This one happens to be a smelt color, green on top, lighter on the bottom. A lot of these shad and the shiners out here have got a darker back this winter. I think part of that is simply due to the fact that we don't have a lot of color in the water, so they're trying to get down to rocks and things like that, and they're absorbing some of that color instead of being a real lighter color that you'll find in murkier water. Some of the other stuff that we're using during the day would be, some of your lighter colors with the chartreuse tail. This is pepper chartreuse. I know that Brian really likes his Moxies. This is a purple cracker chartreuse tail. It's been real effective for him on Pool 2 as well for some of those bigger fish. As we get closer to nighttime, I'm going to get a little bit bigger profile in the water because those fish have to find the bait at night. And I also like to put a little bit more color to it at nighttime. I find a hard bait to beat is the 3.5 inch Callan's Big Game Grub. Love this thing in the chartreuse hollow. It's been a great color for me this winter. I've done real well on it. Really enjoy that. Chartreuse ringworms. This is chartreuse with a white core. That's a beef fishing product. Great color down here. As well as Culprit makes a series called Riptide. It's their saltwater series. This is called a Conley grub. A lot of guys are throwing these for redfish down on the flats, down Florida and the Gulf Coast. I was fortunate enough to get on their pro staff this year, and I ordered up a bunch of them just to see how they'd work for freshwater application. And the advantage you have with something like this is instead of one thing going through the water and creating water disturbance, you get two tails back there mixing up the water a little bit more. The one drawback to it is you do need to fish it on a little bit heavier jig because it's got a little bit more buoyancy to it because it's a bigger profile. This is the Gulf sand with the pink tails. Like that color in the dirtier water. It's a real neat color. This is called New Penny. It's a, no, this is redfish, I apologize, redfish. And you see on the back there, it's got a chartreuse looking tail. What I did is I just dyed that because I mentioned earlier I like that chartreuse after dark. So what I did is I took a spike it dye that you can pick up at just about any major tackle store. If I can find it in here. There it is. Comes in a little jar. It's garlic scented. You just dip whatever amount in there you want in there. Leave it in there for 30 or 40 seconds. Pull it out. Make sure you don't get it on your clothes because it does turn your bibs chartreuse. I have a spot of it on the pocket. Pretty fantastic thing to figure out after you do it. Lastly, another bait that is a Culprit product that I've come to really appreciate is their mullets. Again, saltwater product. A lot of guys are throwing them on the upper East Coast, and again down on the flats for those reds. The neat thing about them is they've got a great big paddle tail on them. It's a lot bigger tail than what you can find on a lot of the products offered here locally. So it's creating quite a bit of disturbance coming through the water. I really like these and the Conleys as a pitched item opposed to a drag item. It's just the bigger profile, a little bit bulkier bait. It's hard to keep it right near the bottom where you want it when you're trying to drag at speed. Where pitching it, you've got a little bit better control over that because you're throwing it out to rocks and you're kind of working it down along the edge on a semi-tight line. So you're just kind of feeling your way down it and slowly retrieving it back to the boat. When the fish are relating to structure like that, they're a lot more apt to come up off the bottom, where when we're dragging, a lot of times we're just dragging flats in the middle of nothingness. There's not a lot of structure to hold them, so they like to hold tighter to the bottom. They're not real apt to get up off the bottom and come and chase something like this. Couple great options for pitching those wing dams and wood. Certain situations in the fall time, and then a little bit later in the spring here as the water warms up and those fish start to relate more to those structures than they do just the current breaks and seams along the main flows, main channel edges, things like that. Some of the jigs that we're using, during the daytime, I'm throwing a lot of precision jig head. It's that beef fishing product. It's a real compact head, gives you a real nice current cutting ability. Gets you the ability to get it down a little bit deeper with those bigger profiles. This one I've tipped with a firecracker chartreuse ringworm. Brian was on the old white bass pretty good this morning on the firecracker chartreuse, so I had to follow suit. Fortunately, I wasn't as lucky as he was. Hopefully we get a few good walleyes on that later. Fishing this on Suffix 832. It's a new super line they've got out. They released it 2 years ago. I really like it. It's a real thin diameter line. It's really soft too. It's not like a lot of the other super lines that are out there that are kind of wiry and stiff. It also is hydrophobic. What that means to you guys is it's got a waterproof core in it, so it doesn't absorb that water. A lot of times we're fishing in below freezing conditions, and what can happen a lot of times is you're just pulling ice into your guides, and it's going to cause your guides to freeze up and your spool to freeze up, which makes it kind of a pain when you got to be stripping line off and thawing your guides out in the dark time. Not a huge fan of that. So the 832, I got that on a Lew's speed spin. The advantage to the Lew's is it's a real big arbor spool, so you're picking up line quickly. In some of the situations we find ourselves in dragging and pitching, you're going to be near wooden rocks. So if you get a smaller arbor reel, those fish have the opportunity to get into some of that cover and get you hung up. With the big arbor, you're picking up a lot of line in a hurry, so you set the hook, get them up out of there. You can get down on them and get them up away from that cover in a hurry. Fishing these things on a lot of medium action rods. A little bit more fun that way, medium light. A lot of guys do fish with medium heavy. for me. I'm more in here for the sport than just getting a bunch of them for the box. So it's a little bit more fun to play these fish out because you're going to catch a lot of fish in that 10 to 14 inch range as you're trying to sort out some of these bigger fish. So those smaller fish obviously fight a little bit better. Another jig head I really like at night is the Moon Eye. It's a VMC product. Rapala bought out VMC, brought the Linders on board, and they designed this jig head. The back profile, it's an aspirin shaped jig head, so it doesn't have a big round profile that it's going to pick up a lot of current, things like that, so it cuts through the current pretty well and it's able to keep you down near the bottom. The thing I love about this jig, I've got one without plastic on it right here, is it's got that great big wide gap hook on it. The advantage of that is if you've got some of these bigger profile baits on there, a lot of times you're covering up a lot of hook shank. So if you had a smaller profile, you get away with a little bit smaller hook. With those bigger baits, it's really nice to have a big hook that's exposed because we're not fishing in the wood a lot of times, so you can get away with that exposed hook. You set the hook and it's 90% of the time fish on. You're not losing a lot of those fish, which is a real nice attribute to a hook like that. The precision jig head again is this. This is what it looks like without any plastic on it. Pretty good size hook on that as well. The thing I love about these is they've got that real good wire bait keeper on them. A lot of times you're going to be hanging up on rocks and just ripping your jig up and out of that. With a collar style that you find on a lot of lead collared jigs, they can have the tendency to slide down. With that wire, it really acts like a hook and it digs into the meat of that plastic. So when you're ripping it, the bait stays pretty intact and pretty true, so you're not getting the bait to curl, causing the lure to kind of roll in the water. It's running straight and true, which is a big attribute that I really enjoy about both of these hooks. It's a little bit of background on what we're doing. Hopefully we can get some fish this afternoon. I'll put together another video for you, and enjoy. Thank you.
Any idea what those guys were pitching to up there?
They weren't pitching, they're dragging. Yes, it is.
Just crushed it. Got pliers handy?
Yeah. I've got them right here.
That'll work.
Not a bad fish at all.
No, low 20s.
Yeah.
Goodbye. That's good. That's more what I'm looking for. That'll go mid.
Yeah, that'll go mid. Swallowed the shit out of it too.
Should get all over my bag.
Got those pliers?
Where'd it go?
Real shallow.
Huh?
Real shallow.
Don't make your eyes up there. Boards right here.
That's an alright one. 24. Real nice 24. Drag and jig.